everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of DasVlog. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about cultural appropriation versus cultural inspiration. For those of you who are hearing a sound in the background, that's Bookham. He is currently sick with kennel cough, so he will be creating some sound as we do this video. So this is going to be kind of a messy video, mostly from the fact that, I tend to not have a script. I go off from what pops in my head, but I do have a few examples to bring up and a few ideas. So the main instances I'm going to be pulling for this are going to be modern instances of using Native American culture, specifically Lakota, Cheyenne, and Plains tribes, and then also the Quileute found along the Olympic Peninsula. So the reason why this is important is because we're going to talk about how authors and fashion have appropriated culture and the difference between what is appropriation versus what is inspiration. So before we begin, let's kind of define these two things. Appropriation is when you take something as a writer, as an artist, and you don't really take the time to understand what this information you're using. So let's use what a lot of people have done in the past, which is let's look at costuming for Native Americans, the headdress with all the feathers. In a lot of Plains tribes, and specifically to the Lakota, different bands had this practice called counting coup, which is you would ride up and you would try to hit someone with a coup stick, which is this long stick where you try to touch them with your hand. And it was a proof of, the ability of the warrior to not get hit, and it was a show of bravery. So a lot of times these headdresses you see, they represent the prowess of a people. And so this has a lot of, importance. It's like how in today's society, because let's be honest here, we're talking about a post-colonial people that have lost their language and have had lots of their, land, let's just say their land was basically taken from them. Even to this day, we have to have people fighting just to get themselves recognized. So when fashion takes the headdress or takes Native American regalia and and even more so, these people are often not going to be from that tribe. They're not even going to be Native American. They're not going to have Native American roots at all. They're not really going to understand it. What they're doing is they're taking something that to these people has a specific meaning. So when you go and you see people dancing at certain things. So like locally here in Washington, we have people who do potlatches, who do big meetings between different parts of the tribe, and they have specific dress. Sometimes it's called regalia or something else, but that is personal to them. So imagine it if someone came from out of nowhere and took something that's personal to you and they thought it was cool, and instead of talking to you about it and understanding the meaning, they just drew it down and then they made a bunch of money off of it. So what effectively is happening here is we are turning something that has a cultural significance. So like in the case of, in the show The 100, there was the bindi or the tilaka, which was worn by Lexa at one point. And this is a form of cultural appropriation because, one, it's not a helm of awe. For those of you, there was an argument saying this thing was a helm of awe. But again, it was something that had a specific cultural, if not religious meaning, and it was taken without really any consideration. It was done to be cool and interesting. Now, it's not to say that this emblem is the only kind of third eye position, but it has an importance. It'd be like, we do it all the time in some cases to, Judeo-Christian concepts, but that's because, let's be honest, mass media right now for the West is primarily influenced by that mythology. So when you take something that really isn't yours and you do it in such a manner that has no regard for what it was, you don't acknowledge where it comes from, and then you go make money off of it, it's like, how do I put this? You're using someone else's work. It's the equivalent of stealing art. When J.K. Rowling took the concept of skinwalkers and applied it to her own stories, she acted like she had a right to do that. Well, one, I read the lore she came up with, and that's not how skinwalkers work. It's not actually that difficult to contact a member of the Navajo and sit down or even just read writing about it. But the point here is we're grasping something and treating it like a common form of, it's a form of merchandise. It's a form of property. It's not ours to take. It's a cultural identity. It's how do you feel when when people mess with how your family is perceived and stuff like that, just takes from you, takes a tradition. You would call it ripping off. Let's be honest, what it is, you're ripping someone off. So when you do this, you're effectively stealing from other people. And so this is why cultural appropriation is a big deal. The Quaaludes had a chunk of their story. I mean, I'm going to rag on Twilight fans here, but the story of the Quaalude, yeah, she made that up. My friends Rosala Shan have basically said that entire backstory, she made it up. She made the name, and now people parade all over the Quaalude Reservation without respect, really, to the area. So this has negative impact. We have a lot of people, J.K. Rowling, Stephanie Meyer, and others who have, and even people in the fashion industry use tribal designs, and they get away with it. They make money. They think it's cool. I mean, when you put on a tattoo that has Maori significance, you're stealing. I think it's cool that you're doing something to make a statement, but if you're going to make a statement, learn the meaning behind it. Just like if you get like a Celtic a Gaelic tattoo, understand what that means. And so we're going to go back now. What is the difference between this and inspiration? So when I wrote Threefold Seer, the book in general is inspired by the story of King Kamehameha and the story of the unification of Japan. So a lot of the cultural elements, such as the dress that Sekansha wears, is a mixture between a dress that is found in parts of Nigeria and the Sampot dress of southeastern Thailand, that area. And I looked at it and I described it, and we created a dress specific to the book, but we acknowledge where we get this idea. It's not, we didn't just come up with that dress. That entire design is specifically supposed to have that feel, because a lot of this book is supposed to be based on, Austronesian, Malaysian, Indonesian, in other cases, Maori, Polynesian, Hawaiian concepts. So when we want it to feel strongest there, we use those elements. Like I have characters who live in longhouses that are much like the longhouses for the Salish. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to have characters who work with bark. I've always found the usage of that very interesting. And I've grown up. I mean, I've seen this, and I've seen the impact that when the British took their totem poles had. So the big difference here is, one, I'm acknowledging where I'm getting my inspirations. So if you decide to write a book that is inspired by, the Apache, talk to some Apache. If you're going to use Apache words, acknowledge that you're doing this. And acknowledge that your voice, especially if you're someone of privilege, you're possibly taking away from them. So what I would encourage here, let's talk about avoiding appropriation. So the first thing to do is research. So if you find something that is incredibly sensitive, I would be honest, avoid it. So if you're going to have a character that wears something that's like a bindi, maybe find someone who's Indian and sit down and talk to them, understand what that means, and if you maybe show some respect to that into your story. Don't just be like, the third eye, this has a specific significance. It's, for example, in my research on the concept of the tilaka for when I worked on a project, is that it's often gifted, it's a specific design, some kings in different parts of Indian history wore it, and it's varied. So it's a good idea to take time to consider what that means, because if you understand something, it even makes it better. What I did here is I understood why people did something, and I applied that knowledge. I didn't just say, oh, it's cool. I went, oh, this is interesting, and I researched it for myself. I thought about it. I thought about why people would think this way, and then I wrote about it. But when people ask, I go, oh, I got this idea from these people. I think you should look them up. They're very fascinating. I mean, if you want to study the concept of Hawaiian mythology, go for it. Polynesian mythology is fantastic. I mean, look at Moana, the concept of Maui. He's found all over the place. He's found in most Polynesian mythologies. But it's something to consider. Don't just throw up a tiki and say, oh, look, it's like that. I actually have a tiki. It was carved by a guy from Maui. He's one of the top carvers. This is Joe in the back. It's beautiful. But I don't claim anything other than that I bought it from a guy, Be considerate. So the best way to avoid appropriation, especially if you're someone from a position of power or you don't know something, take time to know it. Second, get to know someone maybe from that community and talk to them about what you want to do. Maybe there's something going on in that community they want to avoid. I mean, especially now with Native Americans, specifically, people happening over at Standing Rock, I would do my best to avoid a lot of certain things that could be perceived as the dominating culture taking again, because we're not here to merchandise, to monopolize, and to turn something into something you can make money off of. At the end of the day, all appropriation effectively is you're taking from someone else, you're taking something that they consider quite dear to them, and you're making money off it, and you're getting attention for it. I mean, J.K. Rowling did not create the concept of Thunderbirds. She did not create the concept of skinwalkers, and yet she still makes tons of money, and she doesn't even live here. And to my knowledge, she's not contributing anything back. Stephanie Meyer has not contributed, to my knowledge, anything back to the Quaalude. So what you're doing is you're pillaging. So I guess that's all I have to say on this matter, but eventually I'd like to talk about it more. But anyway, have a good day. Bookum should be better within the end of the week. And as the Amazons say, Artenishan La. Spirits to you. Bye.